Hi guys, it's Laura here. I'm going to be going over what to do when you don't know what to do week 4. I'm excited about next week that we will actually be able to meet in person, but I'm really excited that you would take time to hang out with me and be here for the lesson. So let's go ahead and get started. So we all have a favorite movie, and one of my favorite movies, I'm a huge Disney fan, is Aladdin. And I love it because I really get to know who the character is. And so the producer's job in a movie is to make it to where you can relate to the character by knowing the good and the bad. So let's say maybe you are a action fan, and so there's, I don't know, about 100 movies where the daughter gets kidnapped, the dad comes after her, and they tell you this backstory about how the dad and daughter had a really bad relationship, and so you get to learn like the good and the bad. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about, is a backstory and how you may not understand something right now, but how God can reveal to you in time how that can be used. And so we're going to be talking about Joseph, and we are going to continue to look at what he went through. But before we get into the scripture, I want you guys to be thinking about some problems that maybe you've had, or things that have come up that you just don't understand. So maybe you've had people make fun of you, like you've been bullied. Maybe you've had a friend that has passed away, a family member that has died suddenly of cancer or something like that. Parents divorce, and you just don't understand. You feel like it, you had part in it, like it's your fault. Maybe you self-harm and it's gotten out of control, and you just don't understand why you do something the way you do. So it can be really hard to understand difficulties in the moment. That's where God is growing us and helping us to understand. So I want you guys to understand that difficulties can be random, they can seem pointless, and you just don't understand. Just like in a movie, when they flash back to a backstory, sometimes it can seem awkward, like it's not in the moment, but it helps you to understand the original story when you understand their backstory. So we are going to look at, like I said, we're going to look at Joseph. And where we are, Joseph was sold into slavery, and by his brothers. So he was sold into slavery by his brothers, and then he was taken to a foreign land. He was taken to Egypt, and then he did something that, he didn't really do anything. He was falsely accused by Pharaoh and put into prison. And so that's kind of where we find Joseph. He is in prison, and at this point probably thinking, what's the point? Why? I don't understand what's going on. So let's get into our scripture. We're going to be in Genesis 40, 1-3 to start out with. And it says, sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master and the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his 2 officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them into custody in the house of the capital of the guard, the same prison where Joseph was confined. So basically what happened is Pharaoh, who was the boss of Egypt, got mad and threw 2 dudes in prison for like nothing. But he had the power to do that. And so they're in prison with Joseph. So let's see what happens next. It says, after they've been in custody for a while, each of the 2 men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night. And each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's official, who were in custody with him in the master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one here to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So that was Genesis 40, 4-8. So we've read 1-8. So there's a lot happening here. Remember that Joseph is in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And even though he's in a really difficult situation, he's still honoring God. So the men tell Joseph his dreams, and with God's help, he interprets them. He tells them what had happened that actually happened. Based on the dream the chief cupbearer had, Joseph said that he would restore to Pharaoh's to a favored position. And he was. And as the chief baker, Joseph said he would not have the same luck. And he didn't listen, and the rest of the story of what happened. Here's a little crazy. It's worth the read. So go ahead and check out the rest of that story. But would you think that since Joseph was there to help the cupbearer out, that he would have made some sense if the cupbearer spoke up and was like, hey, Pharaoh, this guy helped me out. He helped me understand this dream, and it was perfect, and I think that you need to get him on your staff, like, as soon as possible, He would basically be like, hey, this guy's awesome. We don't have somebody to interpret dreams, so you need to get him out of prison. Not quite what happened. So, unfortunately, the cupbearer forgot about Joseph. He got out of jail and went on about his own life. How many times has that happened to you where, you do something for somebody and then you're like, oh, they're going to respect me. They're going to help me out, kind of thing. Not that you do something just to get something out of it, but, you expect people to kind of, repay the favor. Well, that didn't happen. So 2 years later, yes, Joseph sat in prison for 2 more years. Pharaoh had 2 dreams that troubled him, and he desperately searched for someone on his staff to interpret them, but he couldn't find anybody. It was only then that the cupbearer was like, hey, I remember this guy, when you put me in prison, he interpreted my dreams, and you can have him interpret for you. So Pharaoh brought him out of prison, and Joseph interpreted his dreams and was promoted to like this powerful position or whatever. And so he's still living in a foreign land. So it's not like he went out of prison and got to go home. So I wouldn't say that his life was perfect or was able to be, free at all. He was still under Pharaoh's law. So if Pharaoh got angry, he'd be right back in prison just like the other 2 guys. So, but at the same time, all the stuff that he's going through, each time the difficult situations positioned him to be prepared for something great. So that's what you have to think about when God puts you through difficult times, because, you will. Life is difficult, so you will go through difficult times. So we just have to remember that God is really good at doing the impossible. So when you're going through problems, when you're going through struggles, and you're trying to understand what those are, God is really good at pulling out all the stops and making things that seem impossible possible. So bottom line, you guys know we like to highlight the bottom line. It says, when you don't know what to do, remember that your problems position you for a purpose. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be tied up in this nice little pretty bow. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be fixed and go back to the way it was before. Sometimes what was before may not be what God intended. And so you want to grow. And you want to experience. And so the hardest and the worst things we experience aren't the end of our story. In fact, that's where they become part of something more. So that's where our story grows. So when you're going through pain and you don't see the purpose yet, there's a few things that I want you to remember. So if you've got a notebook out and you want to write these down, go ahead and grab some pen and paper. So number 1 is remember that no one else is going through your life story. Your life story is individual, just like you. And so nobody else goes through the exact same things that you're going through. But that your story can interact with others. So think about it this way. When you're going through family drama, you can help people that are going through family drama as well. When you go through a hard breakup, understand that you can relate to someone who's going through a hard breakup as well. When you have big doubts and questions about your faith, you can be a safe place to talk about when people have their own doubts and questions about their faith. So everything that you go through, you're experiencing, can be helping someone else go through that. A lot of you, especially my small group girls, you guys know some of my mistakes that I made, the boundaries that I didn't put into place growing up. And so my mistakes. And so I tell you those so that you don't make those same mistakes. And so that my heartache and my pain and all of the things that at the time I was like, I don't understand. Now I see. I went through that so that maybe you guys won't have to. And so don't waste what God is pulling you through. Joseph went through a lot of stuff and a lot of pain that may have seemed pointless. But when you learn his backstory, when you learn what he went through, you can see that God used his problems and positioned him for a purpose. God took what looked like an impossibly bad situation and he created the unimaginable good that came down the road. And so I would encourage you to continue to read Joseph's story so that you can see that good that came. But when you're in that bad situation, when you're going through that pain or whatever it is that you're going through, I want you guys to think these few questions. What if God used your painful situation to position you for something amazing that you haven't even imagined yet? And what if the first step is simply asking for his help? So I love you guys, and I can't wait for us to meet next week. And I hope that you guys will take the examples and the word and just apply it to your life. We'll meet again next week, and we will be social distancing, and we've got all kinds of things, so make sure you're following our social media to learn what to expect next week, because again, you're what to expect when you don't know what's happening, and so that really applies. So anyway, I'll see you guys next week. I love you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.